You know, there's a fear that sits underneath so many of our decisions, and it shapes so much more than I think we even realize. And that fear is, what are people going to think? It's a fear of judgment. And it pops up every single time I run a workshop. And we start with fears that always features on the list. And the wild part is that most of the time, no one is actually thinking anything about you at all. Yet that question still influences what we say, what we wear, what we post on social media, what we choose to hold back, or what we never ever allow ourselves to even try because of a fear of judgment from other people. I would say it's one of the most powerful invisible forces in our lives because it doesn't actually feel dramatic or irrational, and in many cases it feels very reasonable and sometimes even responsible because it can sound like the voice of caution, or it can sound like a voice that just wants to keep us safe, or a voice that wants to help us avoid embarrassment or failure. So it's really, really, really easy to listen to it. And then before you know it, you're not actually living your life to the maximum that you can. You're not fully living the best life that you possibly can. You're editing yourself. I mean, I see this constantly with people who are doing presentations, people who are genuinely brilliant, genuinely insightful and funny and engaging. They'll step onto a stage or they'll be at the front of a boardroom and everything's ready to go, and then something shifts inside of them and then they tighten or they filter themselves and they become smaller in that moment, not because of a lack of skill, but because they're imagining a judgment that doesn't actually exist. And when your attention is focused on someone else's perceived judgment, your perception of what their judgment is, your attention cannot be on joy. It can't be on freedom. It can't be on authentic and natural expression. So a fear of judgment actually pulls your focus inward in a way that totally disconnects you from the present moment. Instead of thinking about how to connect with who is in front of you right now, or how to express yourself in the most natural way, or what you truly want to say, your mind instead becomes totally occupied with how you're being perceived. And then that makes you start questioning whether you sound intelligent enough, smart enough, funny enough, blah, blah, blah enough. You know, whether that sentence landed, whether they like you, whether you look nervous, like all of the insecurities that we have race through our mind when we start to listen to what we think are the judgments from others. And so then we're running like two tracks at the same time. You're delivering, but you're also constantly critiquing yourself from really like imagined fears. And that drains our presence, it drains our energy, it flattens our energy at the same time, and ultimately it blocks our ability to experience true joy in the moment because we're just stuck in our heads. And I know this doubt really well because my fear of judgment used to show up at the exact same moment every single time I was about to step on a comedy stage. It didn't show up when I was writing. It didn't show up when I was chatting to people before the show. I was completely fine, totally relaxed and excited through the whole process of everything until I was backstage, filled with fear, and right before I was about to walk out, something shifted and this voice would get super loud and super convincing, telling me that I sucked, saying the audience isn't going to like you, you're going to fail, you're going to forget your jokes, you got to get out of here, why are you doing this, this is the wrong career path, and it just went on and on and on. Which is not ideal when you're about to walk out in the opposite direction onto a stage and deliver amazing jokes. That's the last kind of internal critique that you actually need. And nothing had actually changed in my external environment. It was all internal and panic just took over. And as I said, that voice sounds so real in the moment. It sounds certain and it sounds logical and it sounds so urgent, as if it's this truth, as if it's trying to protect us from something. And I mean, I guess it is, because it's our brain trying to keep us safe from the possibility of rejection because, you know, going back centuries, rejection meant that we weren't part of the tribe, which was actual real danger. But now if we're getting on stage in an air-conditioned venue, there is no threat to our life. But we still react in the same way. So if I'd actually listened to the voice that showed up, I would never have walked onto those stages. I would never have done the shows that I did. I wouldn't have built any true confidence. And I definitely wouldn't be here on this podcast right now. So the question isn't whether fear is going to show up for us. A fear of judgment is always going to be there to some degree. The question is whether you choose to actually believe it and listen to it. So the next time you put yourself in a situation where you know your fear of judgment will come up, just acknowledge it. Start by acknowledging it and just understanding that it's there to protect you. It's there because you're doing something that is going to help you grow in some way which feels uncomfortable and feels unfamiliar. So every part of you doesn't want to do it because It's resisting that uncomfortable period, but on the other side is joy, on the other side is growth, and on the other side is an experience of yourself that you don't yet know, and I promise is going to be so much better than you can imagine. So acknowledge it, but don't believe it. Don't listen to it, and start to rewrite your own story. Thank you for watching and listening. Catch you next episode.